In the dark, silent void of space, humanity had always been seen as fragile, small, and insignificant, at the mercy of far older and more powerful alien civilizations. Among them, the Syrinx were the most feared. Their ships, sleek and deadly, cut through space like sharks through water. They were a ruthless, war-hungry species who saw humanity as little more than an obstacle, a potential target for conquest. Their forces were relentless, and for years, humanity had been struggling to survive in a galaxy dominated by the Syrinx's brutal efficiency. Commander Arya Hayes had seen the war firsthand. As a seasoned officer aboard the USS Dauntless, one of humanity's most advanced warships, she knew the stakes. The war against the Syrinx had brought humanity to the brink of extinction. But Arya had a job to do, and that job had always been clear: stay one step ahead, defend Earth, and keep humanity alive. However, her latest mission was different. It wasn't about fighting the Syrinx. It wasn't about dodging their attacks or surviving another day. This time, Arya was tasked with something far more mundane: routine reconnaissance. The Dauntless was to explore the outer edges of Syrinx-controlled space, gathering intelligence and mapping unknown territories. It was supposed to be a quiet mission, the kind of job that usually ended without much fanfare. But as the crew of the Dauntless drifted through the blackness of space, something unexpected happened. It began with a routine scan of a dead star, one that had long since burned out and collapsed into a lifeless husk. Arya wasn't expecting anything unusual. The star had been long forgotten, its energy spent. But then, the sensors picked up a faint signal, something hidden deep within the heart of the star. It wasn't a natural phenomenon, it was something artificial. The discovery sent a wave of excitement and unease through the crew. Arya ordered a closer inspection, directing the ship's engineers to investigate the anomaly. The deeper they went, the clearer it became. This wasn't just some random piece of debris. What they had found was a relic, an artifact far older than anything humanity had ever encountered. It was not of human design, nor was it anything that could belong to the Syrinx. It was unlike any technology the crew had ever seen. As they carefully extracted the artifact, Arya couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. The object, though dormant, seemed to hum with power, its surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to pulse faintly, almost as if it were alive. It was a mystery, a question mark that hung heavy in the air. But the true shock came when the crew decoded the message embedded within it. The message revealed a staggering truth. The Syrinx were not the oldest civilization in the galaxy, as they had always claimed. There had been something before them, something far more powerful, far more ancient. A species that had existed long before the Syrinx, a civilization so advanced that their technology was beyond comprehension. And somehow, they had left something behind, a legacy, a secret hidden within the artifact. As Arya stood before the screen, reading the decoded message, her heart raced. The Syrinx had always believed themselves to be the galaxy's rulers, but now she knew that they were nothing more than the remnants of a fallen empire. They had once been subject to a greater force, a race of beings who had mastered the stars in ways that the Syrinx could only dream of. But there was more, far more. The artifact seemed to contain not just knowledge, but power. A power that could change everything. The Syrinx had known of this power for centuries, and they had done everything in their power to keep it buried. But now, humanity had uncovered it, and with it came a question that would haunt Arya for the rest of her life. What was the cost of unleashing this power? The artifact could level the playing field with the Syrinx in ways they never anticipated. It could turn the tide of the war and give humanity a fighting chance, something that had seemed impossible just days ago. But there was a problem. The Syrinx were already aware that something had been found. They were ruthless, and their hunger for control was insatiable. The discovery of this artifact would spark something far worse than a simple war. It would trigger a battle for control of the galaxy itself. Arya stood in front of the data console, the weight of the decision before her. The artifact had the potential to change everything. It was a weapon, a tool, a source of unimaginable power. But who could humanity trust with such a discovery? Could they even control it? If the wrong hands got hold of it, it could mean the end of everything. Her mind raced as she considered her options. Should they keep the artifact a secret? Should they hide it away, ensuring that no one could ever use it? Or should they risk everything and reveal its existence, hoping that humanity could be trusted with such power? As she paced the bridge, Arya could feel the tension building. The crew was divided. Some saw the artifact as a chance for humanity to rise, to become something more than just a fragile species fighting for survival. Others feared the consequences, knowing that such power could corrupt even the most well-intentioned. The decision was not one to be taken lightly. In the end, Arya knew that the discovery of the artifact would ignite something. It would spark a fire that could either save humanity or consume it entirely. And as the quiet depths of space stretched out before them, one thing became clear: humanity's place in the galaxy would never be the same again. The question now was, who would survive the flames? The USS Dauntless had barely begun to process the implications of the artifact's discovery when the situation took a violent and unexpected turn. It wasn't just the Syrinx they had to worry about anymore. Arya had known the Syrinx would eventually come, but they had underestimated how quickly their fleets could close in on the human vessel. It seemed the Syrinx had learned of humanity's latest discovery, and they were prepared to stop it, whatever the cost. Arya's crew had been working tirelessly to analyze the artifact's secrets, but before they could unlock any more answers, the Dauntless was struck without warning. The first hit came from nowhere, a blast that rocked the ship and sent it spinning through space, sparks flying from the hull. The lights flickered, and alarms blared as the ship was torn apart by the Syrinx's advanced weaponry. The crew fought valiantly to defend their ship, but their efforts were in vain. The Syrinx had anticipated their every move. The Dauntless was left in pieces, its hull fractured beyond repair, floating helplessly in the cold expanse of space. With their ship crippled and no chance of escape, Arya was forced to make a decision that no officer should ever have to make. She ordered the evacuation of the ship. There was no time to waste. Her heart heavy with the loss of so many good men and women, she gathered a small group of survivors, engineers, scientists, and the few officers left, and they managed to board escape pods in the nick of time, barely escaping the wreckage. Floating aimlessly in the cold vacuum of space, with nothing but their life support systems keeping them alive, the survivors drifted. Hours passed, then days. Their destination? Unknown. It wasn't until a strange signal pinged their pods that they were led toward an unexpected discovery: an isolated, forgotten human colony. The colony was hidden on a distant, barren moon in a system on the very edge of known space. The survivors had no idea how it had stayed hidden for so long, but when their pods docked with the settlement, they were greeted by a sight both shocking and humbling. A group of humans, descendants of the old Earth colonists, had been living here for centuries, surviving alone in isolation from the galactic turmoil. Arya and her crew were taken to meet the leader of the colony, Lucian Dre. Lucian was a man who carried the weight of many years of solitude. His people had formed uneasy alliances with the Syrinx long ago, exchanging technology and knowledge in exchange for protection. The Syrinx, in their relentless pursuit of control, had used this agreement to keep the humans in check. But Lucian had learned long ago that relying on the Syrinx was dangerous. He had chosen a path of survival, but at what cost? When Arya and her crew told Lucian about the artifact and the message they had uncovered, Lucian's reaction was not what they expected. He was not amazed or hopeful. He was fearful. He claimed to know far more about the ancient race that had created the artifact than he had ever shared with anyone. The technology they had left behind, he explained, was not something that could be wielded easily. It was too powerful, too dangerous. Revealing its existence would invite ruin not just for humanity, but for everyone who came into contact with it. The Syrinx were not the first, Lucian explained, his voice low and serious. But they were the survivors of something far worse. The beings who created the technology you found didn't just conquer, they controlled. And once they fell, they left behind nothing but chaos. The Syrinx learned from them, yes, but they also suffered because of it. Do you think humanity is ready to bear that kind of power? Arya, still processing the weight of the discovery, found herself at a crossroads. Lead humanity to victory against the Syrinx, or would it lead them down a path of destruction? She believed the answer lay in unlocking its secrets. Perhaps it was the key to leveling the playing field. the weapon they needed to take the Syrinx down once and for all. But Lucien's words stayed with her. Was she being blinded by the hope of salvation? Was she willing to risk everything to fight for humanity's survival, no matter the cost? The philosophical rift between them grew wider with every conversation. Aria found herself torn. She believed in the artifact's potential to save humanity, but Lucien's warnings held a terrifying weight. And then, as if things weren't complicated enough, a new threat began to reveal itself. A faction of Syrinx agents, disguised as humans, had infiltrated the colony, spreading misinformation and causing distrust. The agents, skilled in deception and manipulation, worked behind the scenes to sow confusion and fear among the humans. It became clear that they weren't just after the artifact, they were trying to control it. The Syrinx had been watching the humans closely, biding their time. Now, they saw an opportunity to infiltrate and sabotage the growing movement against them. The colony's delicate balance teetered on the edge of collapse. Trust between Aria and Lucien began to erode as secrets were uncovered, alliances shifted, and suspicions grew. The hidden Syrinx agents were the puppeteers, playing both sides, manipulating events in a way that no one could have anticipated. The situation grew more dangerous with each passing day, as the human survivors found themselves divided, facing threats from both the Syrinx and their own people. It was a battle for more than just survival now. Aria was no longer only fighting against the Syrinx. She was fighting against uncertainty, against the very fabric of truth itself. With every step forward, the artifact seemed to twist their minds in subtle ways. Aria could feel the pull of its power, its strange, ancient influence gnawing at her thoughts. Her morale compass was beginning to waver, and she couldn't tell if it was the artifact, the stress of the war, or her own fears that were clouding her judgment. As the days passed, Aria found herself questioning everything. Was Lucien right? Was the artifact too dangerous for humanity to handle? Could they unlock its power without losing themselves to it, just as the Syrinx had? Or was it already too late? The stakes had never been higher. In a quiet moment, as Aria stood looking out over the barren landscape of the colony, she knew that the decision ahead of her was one that would change everything. The choice wasn't just between trusting Lucien or the artifact, it was about the future of humanity itself. Would they survive the coming storm, or would the secrets of the past doom them to repeat history? The answers were within her reach, but the cost of finding them might be higher than she could ever imagine. The universe trembled as the Syrinx launched their all-out assault on Earth. The attack came swiftly and without mercy. Massive fleets of Syrinx warships poured into human space, their ships filling the sky like dark clouds. It was the final phase of their conquest, and they were determined to crush humanity once and for all. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was now under siege. Aria Hayes stood on the bridge of the Dauntless's warship core, staring at the chaos unfolding in real time. Her remaining crew, alongside Lucien and his followers, had managed to scavenge what they could from the ruins of the Dauntless. They had used the knowledge contained in the artifact to repurpose the ship's warship core, constructing something far more terrifying, a weapon powered by the Forgotten Race's technology. This wasn't just a weapon of mass destruction, it was something far worse. This weapon could unravel the very fabric of reality itself. The crew, once hopeful and united in their mission, now found themselves shackled by the weight of the decision they had made. Aria had unlocked the artifact's secrets, but in doing so, she had unleashed a force unlike anything humanity could control. The weapon they were building was more than a tool of war. It was a harbinger of destruction on a cosmic scale. If activated, it could tear apart space and time, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. The Syrinx might have been an oppressive enemy, but now humanity had forged something far worse, a weapon that threatened to end the entire galaxy. The Syrinx knew it was only a matter of time before they reached Earth. The weapon could turn the tide of the war, but it could also be humanity's undoing. As the pressure mounted, Aria felt herself sinking into the weight of her choices. This was no longer just about surviving or defeating the Syrinx. This was about the very survival of the universe itself. Lead humanity to victory against the Syrinx, or would it lead them down a path of destruction? She believed the answer lay in unlocking its secrets, Perhaps it was the key to leveling the playing field, the weapon they needed to take the Syrinx down once and for all. But Lucien's words stayed with her. Was she being blinded by the hope of salvation? Was she willing to risk everything to fight for humanity's survival, no matter the cost? The philosophical rift between them grew wider with every conversation. Arya found herself torn. She believed in the artifact's potential to save humanity, but Lucien's warnings held a terrifying weight. And then, as if things weren't complicated enough, a new threat began to reveal itself. A faction of Syrinx agents, disguised as humans, had infiltrated the colony, spreading misinformation and causing distrust. The agents, skilled in deception and manipulation, worked behind the scenes to sow confusion and fear among the humans. It became clear that they weren't just after the artifact, they were trying to control it. The Syrinx had been watching the humans closely, biding their time. Now, they saw an opportunity to infiltrate and sabotage the growing movement against them. The colony's delicate balance teetered on the edge of collapse. Trust between Arya and Lucien began to erode as secrets were uncovered, alliances shifted, and suspicions grew. The hidden Syrinx agents were the puppeteers, playing both sides, manipulating events in a way that no one could have anticipated. The situation grew more dangerous with each passing day, as the human survivors found themselves divided, facing threats from both the Syrinx and their own people. It was a battle for more than just survival now. Arya was no longer only fighting against the Syrinx. She was fighting against uncertainty, against the very fabric of truth itself. With every step forward, the artifacts seemed to twist their minds in subtle ways. Arya could feel the pull of its power, its strange, ancient influence gnawing at her thoughts. Her moral compass was beginning to waver, and she couldn't tell if it was the artifact, the stress of the war, or her own fears that were clouding her judgment. As the days passed, Arya found herself questioning everything. Was Lucien right? Was the artifact too dangerous for humanity to handle? Could they unlock its power without losing themselves to it, just as the Syrinx had? Or was it already too late? The stakes had never been higher. In a quiet moment, as Arya stood looking out over the barren landscape of the colony, she knew that the decision ahead of her was one that would change everything. The choice wasn't just between trusting Lucien or the artifact, it was about the future of humanity itself. Would they survive the coming storm, or would the secrets of the past doom them to repeat history? The answers were within her reach, but the cost of finding them might be higher than she could ever imagine. The universe trembled as the Syrinx launched their all-out assault on Earth. The attack came swiftly and without mercy. Massive fleets of Syrinx warships poured into human space, their ships filling the sky like dark clouds. It was the final phase of their conquest, and they were determined to crush humanity once and for all. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was now under siege. Arya Hayes stood on the bridge of the Dauntless's warship core, staring at the chaos unfolding in real time. Her remaining crew, alongside Lucien and his followers, had managed to scavenge what they could from the ruins of the Dauntless. They had used the knowledge contained in the artifact to repurpose the ship's warship core, constructing something far more terrifying, a weapon powered by the Forgotten Race's technology. This wasn't just a weapon of mass destruction, it was something far worse. This weapon could unravel the very fabric of reality itself. The crew, once hopeful and united in their mission, now found themselves shackled by the weight of the decision they had made. Arya had unlocked the artifact's secrets, but in doing so, she had unleashed a force unlike anything humanity could control. The weapon they were building was more than a tool of war. It was a harbinger of destruction on a cosmic scale. If activated, it could tear apart space and time, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. The Syrinx might have been an oppressive enemy, but now humanity had forged something far worse, a weapon that threatened to end the entire galaxy. The Syrinx knew it was only a matter of time before they reached Earth. The weapon could turn the tide of the war, but it could also be humanity's undoing. As the pressure mounted, Arya felt herself sinking into the weight of her choices. This was no longer just about surviving or defeating the Syrinx. This was about the very survival of the universe itself. In a moment of clarity, Arya made an unexpected decision that stunned everyone. She sided with Lucien's faction. The truth, as Lucien had always warned, was more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The artifact was not merely a relic of a lost civilization. It was something far more insidious, a sentient intelligence, a being from the ancient race who had created the technology. It wasn't just that the Syrics were under the influence of this power, they were also its pawns. And now, humanity had unknowingly become the next vessels for its control. ASA. The weapon began to take shape. The horrifying truth became undeniable. The Syrics were merely a distraction. The true enemy wasn't the Syrics at all. The real threat was the artifact itself. The ancient race had never intended for their technology to be used by anyone. It had been a tool of control, and now it had found its new host, humanity. The artifact had been manipulating them all along, drawing them into a trap that would lead to their downfall. For the first time, Arya felt a deep, chilling sense of betrayal. Everything she had believed, everything humanity had fought for, had been built on a lie. The Syrics were not the true masters of the galaxy. They were just a symptom of a far greater disease. Humanity had been foolish to believe that technology could solve their problems. They had reached for power, but they hadn't understood the consequences of wielding it. Arya stood alone in the quiet of the ship's command center, the weight of her decision crashing down on her. There was no going back. She could destroy the weapon, but doing so would mean losing the last chance humanity had to fight the Syrics. She could also activate the weapon, using its power to fight back, but in doing so, she would become nothing more than a vessel for the ancient intelligence, losing herself in the process. The decision was agonizing, but the reality was clear. The artifact, now fully unlocked, had to be stopped. Arya could feel it calling to her, its influence whispering in the back of her mind, urging her to embrace its power. It promised victory, it promised an end to the Syrics, but at what cost? She could no longer deny the truth. This wasn't just a weapon. This was a force that controlled time and space, and if left unchecked, it could unravel everything. But what was the alternative? If Arya allowed the weapon to be used, the Syrics would be defeated, but at the cost of everything humanity had ever known. The fabric of reality itself would be torn apart, and the universe would fall into chaos. The artifact would have claimed victory, not just over the Syrics, but over all life in the galaxy. The only way to stop it was to confront it directly. Arya knew that the only way to prevent the weapon's activation was to surrender herself to it. If she allowed the artifact to merge with her consciousness, she could shut down the weapon from within. But the cost was steep. The artifact was a sentient intelligence. It would consume her, erase her, and absorb her mind into its own. It was a choice between the destruction of the universe or the loss of herself. Arya stood at the precipice of her decision, knowing that the fate of billions rested on her shoulders. The crew, Lucian, and the remaining survivors had already made their decision. They would fight. But Arya knew that to truly stop this madness, she had to sacrifice herself. There was no other way. In the quiet moments before she made her final choice, Arya thought of Earth, the people she had fought to protect. She thought of the families, the soldiers, the children who had never known peace. She thought of the legacy of humanity. Was she willing to give all that up, to sacrifice her own life, to save a future that might never come to pass? The decision was terrifying. As she approached the artifact, her mind raced with doubts. Could she truly do this? Could she trust herself to be the one to end it all? Was she strong enough to let go of her humanity in order to save it? The answer came in a single, gut-wrenching moment. Arya reached for the artifact, feeling its cold, unnatural energy pulse beneath her fingertips. She closed her eyes, surrendering herself to the artifact's power, knowing that once she did, there would be no turning back. The artifact's influence swarmed over her, pulling her in, as her mind began to fade, her sense of self dissolving into nothingness. But before the darkness consumed her entirely, one final thought crossed her mind. If I must lose myself, let it be for them. The universe held its breath. The fate of everything rested in the hands of one woman's sacrifice. The war had ended, but the victory felt hollow. The final battle was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. Arya, now bound to the artifact's sentient consciousness, stood at the heart of it all. Her body was no longer entirely human, nor was it fully the ancient race's creation. She had become something in between, an amalgamation of human will and the unfathomable power of the artifact. The moment she merged with it, everything changed. The weapon that had threatened to destroy the galaxy was now under her control, and with a single, focused thought, she disabled the Syrinx's most powerful warships. Their fleets vanished in the blink of an eye, consumed by the forces that now lived within Area. For a brief, exhilarating moment, humanity thought they had won. Earth was safe, the Syrinx defeated, and the future seemed possible again. But there was no joy in the victory. No triumph. Just silence. The price of saving humanity was written in Area's altered form, a constant reminder of what had been sacrificed. Her eyes, once human, glowed with an otherworldly light. Her voice, when it broke through the ship's comm system, was no longer solely her own. It carried something deeper, more ancient, something that resonated within the minds of every surviving crew member. Area had done it. The artifact was no longer a threat, and the Syrinx were gone. Earth was saved. Yet, she was no longer the same person who had stood on the Dauntless months earlier. The artifact had taken her. It had remade her. Her heart ached with the loss of her former self, but she understood. This was the cost. The price humanity had to pay to wield power beyond their comprehension. The survivors, who had been with her through the chaos, now faced their own questions. They had won the war, but at what cost? Humanity was no longer weak, no longer helpless in the face of galactic predators. They had learned the truth they were capable of unimaginable power. But the question lingered, were they truly ready for it? Lucian Dre, once an ally, now watched Area with a mixture of fear and awe. He had always known the dangers of power, the temptation to control, to dominate. He had warned Area of what might happen if they delved too deep into the artifact's secrets. But now, the worst had come to pass. Humanity had tapped into a force it could barely comprehend. He wondered if they were cursed, doomed to forever wrestle with the power they had unlocked. As Area stood among the ruins of the Dauntless. Her voice reverberated across the comms once again, a haunting blend of humanity and something far older. We won, but at what cost? The crew was silent, reflecting on the weight of her words. The battlefield was over, the Syrinx defeated, but the war for humanity's soul had only just begun. Could they ever truly control such power? Would they wield it responsibly, or would they be consumed by it? A small group of survivors, led by Lucian, stood at the edge of the ship's shattered hull. Their expressions were a mix of hope and apprehension. Humanity had stood at the brink of annihilation, but now, with the Syrinx gone, they had a future again. Or did they? What had they become in the process? Arya stepped down from the command center, her movement slow, deliberate. The crew looked at her with reverence, but also with fear. Her presence radiated an eerie calmness, like a force of nature that could shift at any moment. There was a growing distance between them now, a gulf that could never be crossed. She had saved them, but at the cost of herself. What happens now? One of the officers asked quietly, unable to mask the tremor in their voice. The question was simple, but its answer was more complex than anyone could have imagined. Arya's eyes, filled with the echoes of 1,000 ages, looked back at them. "What happens now," she said slowly, "depends on what we do with this." She motioned to herself, the hybrid being she had become. We have power, yes. But we also have the ability to destroy ourselves. This is not just a weapon. This is a lesson, one we must learn, or we will fall. The crew members stood still, staring at her with a mixture of awe and fear. They were no longer sure if she was human anymore, or if she was something else entirely, a being forged by a power that could unravel the fabric of reality itself. Lucian stepped forward, his face grave. "We can't control this area," he said. "No one can. We need to find a way to shut it down, to get rid of it before it consumes us all." Arya turned her head slowly to meet his gaze. For a brief moment, she saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear she had once felt when she first encountered the artifact. But now, that fear was different. It wasn't just the fear of the unknown, but the fear of becoming something they couldn't come back from. "You're wrong, Lucian," she said softly. "This is the future. We can't turn back now. We can only move forward, but we need to choose wisely." And with that, the truth began to settle into the hearts of those who had survived. They weren't just fighting for their survival anymore. They were fighting for their very essence, for their humanity. But humanity had changed. The artifact had seen to that. No longer could they pretend they were the same species they had been before the Syrinx attack. They were something more, and something less. As Arya stood, feeling the weight of the artifact's consciousness pulsing through her, she realized something that had eluded her before. The artifact wasn't just a weapon, it had been guiding humanity all along. It had led them to this moment, shaped their destiny. But for what purpose? A shiver ran down her spine as she pondered the possibilities. Was this the beginning of something new? Or had humanity been manipulated from the start, unwittingly playing into the hands of the ancient race that had left the artifact behind? The answers were still unknown. The universe was forever changed, and the road ahead was uncertain. What was the true cost of their victory? Had they saved themselves, or had they doomed their future? As Arya looked out at the stars, she realized that the future was not hers to control. It belonged to humanity. But the real question was, did humanity even want it?